Hello and welcome to Diecast Diaries. I'm Dan, and in my last video I covered a couple of Siku Unimog models introduced in the late 70s and produced until the mid 80s. But I also mentioned that my first introduction to Siku had been in 1984 when I picked up the then new catalogue from a model show I went to with my dad. And I have to say that although I was quite impressed with the range when we had a look through the catalogue to see all the different models they did, one thing that was a little bit disappointing was the fact that there were no military models. I've always been very into my military models, and most of the other ranges at the time, Matchbox and Corgi and that, would have had probably one or two military models still around. So I was quite disappointed when I saw that there weren't any at all in the Siku catalogue. I didn't know at the time, of course, that Siku had done a military range from the sort of mid to late 70s. They did a couple of Leopard tanks, a Jeopard anti-aircraft tank, and a few other vehicles, but they were all long kind of out of production. And even now, I've only managed to pick up two vehicles from that range. They seem to be sort of quite difficult to come across, and when they do sort of crop up on eBay or whatever, they're not the cheapest. So that's a range I would certainly like to add a few more to. But yeah, as I say, when I got this catalogue, as far as I was concerned, Siku didn't do any military models at all, and that's kind of how it stayed throughout the 80s and all through the 90s. Therefore, it was a little bit of a surprise when in 2000, Siku introduced a small range of military models. Now, it should be pointed out that these were all just recolours of existing models from the range, and these also weren't models from the normal 1 to 55 scale range. These were from the Siku Super Series, which was the sort of cheaper fit-the-box scale size range that they'd introduced, I think, from the sort of late 80s. But nevertheless, it was quite a surprise when I came across these in sort of toy shops. So the first one of them was this. So it was quite interesting as well that all three of them were done in this KFOR livery, which is Kosovo Force. Now, of course, these being released in 2000, Kosovo would have been very prominent in the news only the previous year with the sort of campaign to kind of liberate it. Obviously, it was a lot of NATO airstrikes involved, and then there was an international peacekeeping force, KFOR, which the Germans were a number of countries that provided troops for it. Hence, why I think it might have been that Siku took the decision to not only do military vehicles, but give them the sort of KFOR logo on the side as well. So it's a Unimog and boat trailer. The original one from the Siku range was in kind of an off-white colour with the Red Cross logo on the side, and I think the Red Cross might have been repeated on the boat as well. Having done a little bit of research for this video, I did find out that there was another version of this Unimog and boat trailer that Siku did, but it was in DLRG markings, which I think is the kind of German equivalent to the RNLI, or it's some kind of rescue service anyway. Obviously, that doesn't tend to mean much to people kind of over in the UK or in other countries, so it may well have been that one was only available in Germany. But yeah, so Unimogs, as I mentioned in the last video I did, always been a vehicle that I like, so really pleased that to see this one that Siku had done in military markings. The wheels do let it down slightly, it has to be said, but these are obviously the same wheels that were used for all the other vehicles in this range, civilian or military. They all had these kind of white wheels, so these ones, they do seem a lot more toy-like than other models in the Siku range. There's kind of a bit more plastic content, and obviously, as I mentioned, the scales, they were just fit the box. They weren't kind of all done to a sort of nice consistent scale as Siku had been done previously. But having said that, it's still pretty nice. You've got the cab and the sort of rear body here is all metal. Obviously, the plastic top, which is removable, is that's obviously plastic, as I say. And then you've got the sort of chassis underneath is all plastic. And just very basic details, just says Siku and then the model number underneath there. But pretty nice. Nice that they've picked out the headlights and the Mercedes badge. And it's even got a molded in number plate on the front now, which is sort of pretty good detail. So that's nice little Unimog. And obviously it came with boat trailer. Now, interesting, these wheels are ones from kind of the normal Siku range. A lot of the sort of cars they did in that the 1 to 55 scale had these type wheels. So I'm wondering if this trailer ever appeared with any other vehicles from that range. But as I say, it was included with the Unimog, metal trailer and a plastic boat. I'm just going to try, there we go. So yeah, boat will float if you wanted to. It's just got a little outboard motor on the back. Simple detail, you've got a life ring in the front there, and I think a coil of rope or something moulded on the front, yep. And then just a couple of bench seats, but quite nicely done. And nice, as I say, that it would actually float if you wanted it to. And there's the trailer, just a kind of a fairly simple boat trailer. But quite good that they had this sort of little catch to kind of hold it in place. It's a feature of Siku trailers. A bit more sophisticated than the kind of ones from other manufacturers where it just like hooks onto a tow bar, but it could come unhitched if it was going across carpet that was a bit uneven or something, whereas this one will stay attached, which is quite nice. So that's the first one. As I say, released in 2000. Struggle to get this. Oh, there we go. So yeah, released in 2000. Now, they were only available for a couple of years. They were kind of deleted after the end of 2001, so they weren't sort of around for a long time at all. Now, this was the only one I picked up at the time when they were actually sort of currently kind of available in shops. And as you can see, this one actually came from Langley's Toy Master in Norwich and cost me £3.99. The other vehicles in the range, they were all kind of like double-size ones, so they'd have been kind of a similar price. But yeah, the Unimog, I think the other two at the time, I wasn't too bothered about. Obviously, as I say, Unimogs I particularly liked, so that was definitely the one I wanted to get. But more recently, say sort of within the last sort of 10 years or so, I kind of decided that maybe I should add the other two from the range to my collection. So the second one I got, and this one just came off eBay, is this one. It's a Scania low loader with a helicopter. So again, it's another one that was just kind of redone from the civilian range. I can't remember what colour scheme the original version was in, but it's another kind of plausible-ish vehicle for to be seen in military markings. Again, you just got exactly the same style packaging. Siku Super Series, KFOR low loader with helicopter. Didn't actually say what it was, but it is a Scania. I think it's called this designer Scania Torpedo with the bonnet. Quite a smart looking truck actually, and unusual to see a European truck with a bonnet. It's obviously normally like American trucks that have that kind of style cab. Again, decent bit of metal content, plastic chassis, but all the green bits are metal. Quite nice done, but obviously again with the same white wheels, which it would have been kind of nice for these military ones if they had done the wheels all in black or something like that. Maybe we just would have little simple thing, but I think it would have helped quite a bit. Again, you've got a nicely done number plate at the front, and then obviously the KFOR initials on the bonnet. That's quite nice. Trailer is, I think, one that will have been probably used on a number of Siku trucks. It's all metal, but with a plastic ramp. Just obviously a very kind of basic articulated trailer. So just very basic details underneath. And then the helicopter. Metal body, but with a plastic tail boom, obviously plastic rotors and skids. It's fairly sort of simple, but I believe it's supposed to be an MBB BK117, which is a German-produced helicopter, so it kind of makes sense. I see you did do larger version of this in kind of the normal 1:55 scale, not in military colours, obviously. But yeah, it's obviously a sort of helicopter. I think the German military might have used these, but it certainly looks pretty good, looks pretty plausible. And again, with KFOR on the side, it's got the fold-up rotors. So that's the second one. That's the Scania low loader and helicopter. And again, as I say, introduced in 2000 and then deleted at the end of the following year. So, as I say, that came off eBay. And then the other one they did, and this is also one that came off eBay, a simple twin pack of two vehicles that are obviously very plausible for a military to use, which is the front loader, I think they call it. Yeah, KFOR front loader and bulldozer. I'm not sure, and this is actually, I've not actually opened this one and get it off the back end. I'm not sure if either of these are based on real vehicles at all, but they look pretty good. This actually is identical to a digger that was produced by Majorette. The only difference is, and it's quite surprising given that Siku are kind of more renowned for being like of a higher quality, the whole front loader system on this one is plastic, whereas on the Majorette one, it was metal. But it's quite interesting that it is pretty identical to a vehicle that Majorette did in a number of different colour schemes throughout the kind of 80s into the 90s. It's interesting that they've copied it, which kind of makes me wonder if it is based on a real vehicle at all, but I'm not sure that it is. Again, it's got KFOR on the bonnet there. But it's, apart from the loader bit, the green bit is all metal, and then obviously the black bits are plastic. Not done too bad a job at matching up the green, but as I've said before, it's a difficult thing to do. You're never going to get it quite right. So that's the front loader. And that came with this kind of fairly simple bulldozer. Again, plastic blade at the front, but it does at least have some movement, just kind of raise up a bit. Tracks, obviously, in this scale, it's just going to have the sort of wheels underneath and sort of solidly moulded plastic tracks, but you can't really expect any different, as I say, in this scale. And again, you've got all the green bodywork here is metal, and then plastic cab, plastic tracks, and as I said, the plastic blade at the front. So, yeah, just a kind of very simple, bog standard bulldozer, but certainly the type of vehicle that military engineers would use. So that was it. That was kind of what. So that was kind of the little KFOR range that Siku released. So it was kind of a bit out of the blue, kind of a bit unusual. As I say, it was, as far as I was concerned, Siku had never done any military vehicles, so for them to suddenly do these was quite a surprise. But as I say, they were only available for a couple of years. But then there would be a kind of a bit of a pause, and then all of a sudden in 2006, I think it was, Siku, again, only as part of the Super Series, so only kind of the sort of small scale ones again, Siku would release a few more military vehicles, and this time these would be kind of genuine military vehicles. So the first one of these was this one. So it's a Mercedes low loader with a Leopard 2 tank. Now, I say genuine military vehicles. Obviously, the tank is. This is, as I say, just the basic Leopard 2. So it's not the kind of current versions which are kind of in use for the German army now. This is the first version of the Leopard 2. All metal, but with a plastic gun barrel and obviously plastic tracks and chassis underneath, and of course the obvious wheels. Obviously, this is a genuine military vehicle. The low loader that it comes with, although it will be a real truck, whether the German army ever actually use these, I don't know, but it certainly looks all right. It's just a very basic kind of articulated truck. Wheels do look a bit better. It still would have been nice if they could have been done in either green plastic or even black or something, but they do look a bit more realistic than the wheels from the KFOR range. I'll just try and get the... I'm not sure that is... I think you can actually separate it, actually. Never mind. But yeah, this will have been another vehicle that Siku kind of did in a number of different colour schemes as a civilian vehicle. And as I say, this trailer will be one that kind of appeared quite a bit. Actually, I'm just going to have a look. I know it is a different trailer to the one with the KFOR logo. I wasn't sure if it might be one that they'd repurposed or anything. So it just got a plastic ramp at the back that folds down. But yeah, quite a nicely done vehicle, but clearly just kind of a repainted civilian one. But nice detail on the tank. I suppose it would have been nice to get a black cross on it, with it being sort of German army. But other than that, I think that's pretty well detailed and easily identifiable for what it is. And you can't really expect any other little bits like sort of machine guns or that on top of the turret in this kind of scale. But quite nicely done. So that's the Mercedes low loader and Leopard 2 tank. The Leopard 2 was actually available separately, but I just picked it up with the truck. Obviously, the individual version is identical, so just thought it just made sense to me just to get the one with the truck, and that's just the packaging for it. So you can see by this time these have gone up £1. So this was from a much missed toy shop that used to be in Chester, Toycraft, and this was £4.99. But this would have been about 2006. That's the package for that one. And then other vehicles in the range were this, which is quite an unusual vehicle to get a model of, but it is a German vehicle, so that's probably why. And it's the Fuchs, which is Fox. I think the proper German name for it is a transport panzer. It's basically an armoured personnel carrier. So it's a 6x6 armoured personnel carrier, quite widely used by the German army and I think a few other European armies. And actually, during Desert Storm in 1991, both the British Army and the US Army used these for nuclear, biological and chemical detection purposes, I think it was. They carried kind of special teams. They didn't use them as kind of normal personnel carriers, but it must have been a specialist version that the Germans made that, as I say, the British and Americans used as well. I don't know if they still use them, but yeah, so it's basically just, as I say, 6-wheel drive, armoured personnel carrier. Rather an oversized machine gun mounted on the top, but it's nice that it's got that. Obviously, it would have had like a machine gun or something on the front there. And again, all the main sort of bodywork here is metal, but you've got like a plastic chassis again. Wheels, although again, it would have been nice for them to be done in sort of green plastic, but they do at least look kind of pretty good. They're not just like standard Siku wheels. They do actually look kind of like pretty realistic for the vehicle. And a lot of, although there's no markings on it again, a lot of nice sort of casting detail. And then the plastic machine gun does swivel as well, which is pretty nice. But yeah, quite an unusual vehicle to get a model of. I'm certainly not aware of any other models of this vehicle in diecast that's been done by any manufacturers. So you see it's actually a slightly unusual configuration in that there's a bit of a gap between the sort of second and third axles. But yeah, so that's the Fox or Fuchs Transport Panzer. So that's a nice one. I think I would say that's probably my favourite vehicle from this particular range, simply because it's so unusual, but obviously is a real vehicle. And that one was, I bought all these at the same time. So this was £1.99, but again from the same shop in Chester. And then we have a bit of an unusual one. Siku, as I've kind of mentioned, not really known for doing vehicles that aren't real or not properly licensed. Now this one at first glance, I'm thinking, well, it's clearly a Humvee, but Siku can't have had the license for it, as they called it, a Desert Lion. And you can see there's a few differences that it doesn't match with what the actual Humvee's like. So the real Humvee has round headlights, and it also only has vertical slats on the radiator. It's quite a distinctive front end. So there are a few kind of little differences with this. They did also do this vehicle in civilian markings where they called it the Canyon. So it seems like Siku didn't have the license to do a model of a Hummer or Humvee. The configuration is also slightly unusual. So it's obviously been given what's supposed to be like the TOW missile launcher, which Humvees were genuinely armed with. But the version tended to be the one with the kind of sloping back that was what they call the armament carrier. You can get Humvees in this configuration with the kind of 4 doors but the open back, but highly unusual for one to be armed with this. I'm guessing that they just thought this version would be more suitable for civilian colours, and it just, paint it green, stick something on the roof, make it a bit more military. The wheels aren't terribly military, it has to be said, but obviously kind of, again, I think more suited to the civilian versions. But yeah, quite an unusual on this. So it's obvious what it's supposed to be, but quite unusual that it's not a vehicle that Siku can have had the license for. Again, no markings on it, but nice that you've got the headlights and the rear lights kind of picked out. And also a bit of a tow bar, although there's nothing from the military range that it could tow. So that's the Desert Lion, as Siku called it. I'll put that there. And then the last one that I've got is actually an aircraft. So again, it's another £1.99 job, and this is they just call it a helicopter gunship, but it is actually a Eurocopter Tiger. So it's kind of like a sort of joint venture by several European helicopter companies. It's like a competitor to things like the Apache. So it's an aircraft that's definitely in service with the German army. But it's quite a nicely done one. It would have been, I suppose, nice for the wheels to be given like sort of black plastic rather than the sort of green. But considering the scale, I think they've got the look of it sort of pretty good. Got the little tail rotor, obviously the main rotors. Even got the kind of swiveling gun under the nose. It's not a particularly attractive looking helicopter, it has to be said, but I know that's not the point. And you got the little stub wings with sort of rocket launchers and I think maybe anti-tank missiles or something underneath there. But yeah, again, it would have been nice for it to have like the sort of black cross on the side or something, just something to give it a little bit of detail. But other than that, it is just kind of plain green all over. So that's the Eurocopter Tiger. Siku did actually do a 1:55 scale version of this. It's not one that I've been able to pick up. They have done a couple of vehicles now in the military range in 1:50 or 1:55 scale. They've done the Leopard, a modern version of the Leopard, which is the Leopard 2 A5, which is actually quite different looking to that. And they've also done it with a big Mercedes low loader, but that one looks like the proper tank transporter that the German army would use as opposed to just a repurposed civilian truck. They've also done the same tank and transporter in 1:87 scale, but both that and certainly the 1:50 scale one are quite expensive and not ones that kind of cropped up. Obviously, I would like to get them, but yeah, there were actually two other aircraft that Siku released as part of this little range. They did an F-18 Hornet and a Eurofighter Typhoon. Neither of them are ones I kind of bothered picking up. I think they've got obviously the fixed undercarriage, and I don't know, I just didn't think they looked particularly good. One nice touch with them, though, is that each one came with a sheet of stickers, because each one's used by a variety of different countries, and you could obviously pick whichever country you wanted it to represent. So the Hornet came with American, I think Spanish, probably Swiss markings, and maybe a couple of others. The Typhoon, Luftwaffe, I'm assuming RAF, and a couple of other countries as well, which is quite a nice touch. But yeah, nothing with this one. Just plain green all over. So yeah, just a sort of a random little selection of military vehicles that Siku have released. As I say, not the first military vehicles that Siku have done. I'd very much like to pick up some of the ones they did from the mid to late 70s, but as I mentioned at the start of the video, they don't crop up that often, and when they do, they can sort of go for quite high prices. I only have two from that particular range. They did a Volkswagen 181, which is like the sort of post-war version of the Kubelwagen. Then there was a Michigan kind of earth scraper type vehicle, another vehicle that they also did in civilian colours. I did the military version of that, but none of the Leopard tanks I've managed to get or anything like that. But yeah, I would like to. But yeah, I just thought this would be kind of an interesting one. Kind of, I did see in the last video, and I just thought this would be quite a nice one to do. They're probably not a range of military vehicles that are particularly common. So as I have got, with the exception of the two planes, as I have got the full range, I just thought it'd be quite an interesting one to cover. So I'll leave it there for now. In the meantime, please do like, share, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye.